Hello, everybody, and welcome to TLC, the Tom and Lonnie Chat. I'm Stephen Lamarca, AMT, and I'm here with our two hosts, Tom Curvis and Lonnie Love of Oak Ridge National Labs. Our topic today is starting up a 3D printing company. Tom, Lonnie, you guys have a really exciting guest for us today, right?
Yeah, we do. This is I've met Austin probably around 5 or 6 years ago, and I'm really excited to have him come and talk about his kind of experience starting up a new company based on a new technology.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean we're ready to roll, boy. Some of the conversations we've already been having are going to be great, and so, well, I'll leave it up to you, Steve, but I think we should turn it over to Austin. We got a lot of cool stuff to cover today.
Okay, Austin, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and give us a spiel on who you are and where you came from?
Absolutely. And first, I want to thank you all for having me on the podcast today. Really appreciate this opportunity. My name is Austin Schmidt from Akron, Ohio, and co-founder of Additive Engineering Solutions. Additive Engineering Solutions was the first company to offer large format additive manufacturing as a contract service. And we got started 5 years ago last Wednesday. So we've been going at it for about 5 years now. And it has been quite the ride. I'm originally from Ohio and went to Case Western Reserve University up in Cleveland. Following Case Western, I worked for Caterpillar for 5 years and then left Caterpillar to start AES.
Yeah, a little bit of building on that. So Austin came to Oak Ridge on a tour with Caterpillar, and this I tell people this was the biggest return on investment I've ever had on a tour. We'd been working on the large scale, the BAM, big area additive manufacturing, and Austin came in with Caterpillar and they had set up a 2-day meeting, and I tell them I never do 2-day meetings. We're just too busy, and so he was kind of bummed, and I said, well, I'll tell you what, you can print whatever the hell you want, I don't care. And he shows me this design for this frame for this excavator, and it was like, oh, we are so going to print that. That is so cool. I'll call it program development. And he'll show some pictures of it. But the really neat part of the story is, so we print it and it goes extremely well. And he goes away and then he calls me up probably a couple weeks later. He goes, guess what? I was like, what? And I'm thinking we're going to get a project with Cat. He goes, I quit. I was like, you did what? I quit Caterpillar. I'm going to start a company. And it's just been one of my, that honestly was one of the highlights of my career. Is seeing Austin come in and really kind of take something that we've been working on and do it better than us. So I'm really, really thrilled and excited to have him here for a guest.
And let me just add for all of you, large companies out there that are watching this and so forth. It's not the typical thing that people who show up to our operation just quit the next day and so forth. So we work with the smaller startups as well as with some of the really big primes and so forth. But I mean, it really is an exciting story. And to me, what is going to be interesting is not just, hey, here's some technology and here's what we're going to do, but Austin is going to bare his soul a little bit, I think, for us, and he's going to talk a little bit about the trials and tribulations of not just starting up a company, but starting up a company, in terms of 3D printing and large format 3D printing. There's something that's near and dear to us, but what are some of the trials and tribulations, that he went through? And it's an awesome story.
Yeah. Go ahead, Austin.
Yeah. I mean, it all happened really fast. I do remember that. And, it all started with IMTS and AMT in 2014 or 2015 when Cincinnati and Oak Ridge and Local Motors were printing the car. And I remember showing up, and I remember seeing the car being printed. I remember talking to Rick Neff and saying, "Hey, this is pretty cool. I'm very interested in this." And got to figure out how to do this. And this was actually my last role at Caterpillar was in the additive manufacturing group. And I actually saw this before I got into that role at Caterpillar. But it always stuck with me in the back of my head. So when I got into the additive manufacturing group at CAT, I went down to Knoxville for an additive manufacturing conference, and that's the fateful tour that Lonnie was referencing there. So I think it was late 2015. Got a chance to tour the MDF, and blown away not just by the BAM, but by all the capabilities of the MDF. But obviously really interested in the BAM, and that's when the wheels started to turn, and we had a project that we wanted to do, and I was going back through the archive on my phone, and January 5th of 2016, basically showed up at the MDF with a team of folks from Caterpillar, and we spent half a day, I think, with Lonnie and Brian Post, kind of showing us around the facility and showing us what the capabilities were. And I think we went back that afternoon on the 5th and designed the part that we wanted to print that afternoon. And then we were printing it the next day on the 6th. And 2 days later, I remember I had a call to back up to the mothership in Peoria and say, hey, I need a truck to get this part back. And they're like, well, can't you just use UPS? And I'm like, no, this is like 2,200 pounds, and I needed like a truck. And so that was what we were able to do in 48 hours at the MDF. Just really blew my mind. It blew everyone's mind at Caterpillar about what was capable, and really just kind of, I felt like I was kind of the first person getting to see what you could really do with this technology. And I was very excited to use it more going forward. And I think that's kind of where I started to run into the first issue. The lab is great. They will do. I tell people, Lonnie, you guys will do one project for anyone. But after that, it's you got to figure out how to do it on your own. And I remember calling you and asking, like, okay, who can I go to get this stuff done? And there wasn't anyone. And I had a bunch of stuff that interested in doing at Caterpillar, and it wasn't really the R&D stuff that the lab was looking for. It was just we just wanted to print stuff. And after talking some more with Lonnie, and he's saying, well, you guys want to print stuff, Boeing wants to print stuff, GE wants to print stuff, all these other folks want to print stuff, but they've got nowhere to go. I kind of thought, hey, there might be an opportunity here to kind of get in on the ground floor, and that's what really led me down this path. And it's funny because I always wanted to own my own manufacturing company. That was a goal since very early on in college. I really wanted to have my own manufacturing company, but I absolutely loved the position that I had at Caterpillar, and I was not looking to leave Caterpillar at that time. I had a really great setup. I had a great team, a great role, and Caterpillar has the ability to compensate better than a startup does. So there were lots of things that were going, and for my role at CAT, but I kind of saw this opportunity, and I was like, this is not something that happens every day or every month or even every year. This is kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity, and that's what gave me part of the confidence to go ahead and start AES.
Austin, you said something that I think is really interesting, which is usually like when you're developing a new technology, you will spin out a company to do this. And that's the MDF is kind of interesting in that we don't want to leave. we like that one-off, try this out. And then, like you said, And so your coming in was so timely because you're right. We were having people left and right wanting us to make stuff. And it's like, we only do one. That's our role. And none of us wants to take the risk of starting up a company. And so your timing was impeccable. It was just absolutely perfect.
Yeah. And, it's, I'll talk about it a little bit later. But it's, one of my keys to success is just showing up. And, it's, just showing up to the lab. It would have been easy to not go down to the additive show, not do the tour, not come back down in January to see if there's anything to do. But the power of showing up is really important. And, when you show up, you meet really good people, such as you guys at the lab. And, it's really been beneficial, going forward.
Yeah. And, I wanted to point out too, that it really is a two-way street. So the reality is we're all about taking really new technology and scaling it up over at MDF and over at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. But we won't do that without a partner, because for us, if you can't scale it and get it out to help out U.S. manufacturing, then it's not part of our mission. So I have to say, it really, with Austin there, it was great because we could work with somebody who could scale it up. And by the way, it wasn't just to throw it over the fence. There was a lot of good interaction there and so forth. And this is exactly our sweet spot. We want to get things going, and then we wanted to hand it off to our industry partners. Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, this picture doesn't do it justice. This thing was massively printed. We had flip clips. And this is kind of common now, but this was early on. And, the technology was only about a year old. And, it's been like 6 months earlier, 9 months earlier, we printed the car. And so getting this off wasn't easy. There were two pieces that went together to make the frame. It was massive.
I know, in retrospect, talking with Brian Post and Alex Roshley, I don't think I appreciated at the time how new it was for you guys still. I just thought this was like every day for you guys. And, looking back, I'm like, wow, this was really big. And even to this day, I mean, 1,000-pound print is a big print, even for us to this day. So it really puts into perspective.
I remember you designing it, and then we put it on the slicer, and it filled up the volume of the printer. And I remember calling Craig Blue and saying, "Hey, dude, we're gonna print something, and we don't have a project. We're just gonna call it program development." Because I think we're going to learn a lot on this. And it was, and that's why I said, I mean, we didn't get a project out of it, but I would call this in terms of the MDF, one of our greatest return on investment in terms of program development, because, it really got you, I think, kind of launched into, I could actually do this. This was really cool. Yeah, I will find a picture of the final and send it to you. It was massive.
And I think again, I want to point out again where I've always you got to sort of fly the Oak Ridge flag. But I mean, Lonnie mentioned slicer and so forth. So okay, you got the drawing, but then how do you get it? How do you drive the machine and so forth? And even the material. So the material you're looking at there is a pretty special material. And Lonnie will tell you the story. I mean, I think it's a great story. When he first 3D printed that car for over at the IMTS back in, what was it, 2014 maybe, or
September of
2014.
Yeah. And the first one, potato chipped up and was cracking the whole bit. I mean, and this is like, okay, we got to be printing the car the next day or so. So really, I mean, it was great. So it's not just, let's just make a bigger printer, but it's also, what are all the different technologies, right? And how can we bring them to bear? And I got to tell you, it's sort of like, to me, you have all this great stuff, and then you hand it off to a guy like Austin. It's like sending your kid off to school on the first day, and that teacher is going to teach him something good and like make a success out of it. So we watch the kid go out the door, and now the kid is a superstar, and thanks to interactions like with people like Austin and so forth. What was it, Lonnie?
Yeah,
You know,
and
what was the timing on that? Just sort of a quick recap about printing the car, and you're like, huh? Well, that didn't work. I wonder what else we need to do. It's a
Well,
great story.
so we started in 13 on the large scale printing, and then January of 14 we had both Local Motors and Cincinnati come in. So January of 2014. So this is almost exactly 2 years after both companies visited. And then from January of 14 to September, we transitioned everything over to Cincinnati and printed the car. And it was lots of failures along the way, but it was still early. And even I don't tell a lot of people this story, but even the printed car we did at IMTS was the first good print. I mean, it was like this close to failure. It was really, really close. Go big or go home. And
Exactly.
who stayed overnight to watch that thing print?
That was Alex Roshley and Messing. I can't remember I can't remember Messing's first name. It was awesome. We just had a bunch of students come with us and said, "You're the graveyard sift, man. You got to sit here and watch this puppy overnight." But they were excited and they did a great job. It was by the seat of our pants, but it was important because it was the first time we really made anything significant. That was about 1,500 pounds for one part, and learned a lot along the way. And then, like I said, it got exposure. So did you say that's where you first saw BAM? Was it IMTS?
Yeah, IMTS 2014. Yep. I mean, just looking back, that's a huge
cool.
inflection point. It's a huge inflection point, and I probably do have pictures of that at some point. Those are the pictures that I should have dug out.
I'll tell you. So this is why that's important. Yeah. I tell people that demonstration led to 5 companies, but now you're telling me it's 6.
Yeah.
Because we had Cincinnati. They sold the first BAM at IMTS. We had Thermwood. We had a Thermwood router, and Ken was like, "Well, I could do this." And so Thermwood started. Ingersoll wanted to make a huge machine, and so Tino Oldani came up, and he wanted to make a massive machine. So Ingersoll now has their system. We had some young men from Cosine. I can't remember the guy's name. They saw the pellet fed system, and they said, "Well, this is actually too big. We should make a medium scale pellet fed additive system." So Cosine Additive spun out of that demonstration. And then we'd been working with Chuck George. He was with Hapco, and we kept buying these extruders and breaking them. And he didn't really know what we were doing. And he shows up, and he's like, "Oh my God, there's a business here. I could actually make these extruders that go on all of these printers." And so Strange Press spun out of that. Now you're telling me that you came up and saw this, and it was like, that may have been the genesis. That's the power of these demonstrations. And that to me is the power of IMTS, is this demonstration of the art of what's possible and getting people to think outside the box. It's really awesome.
Yeah, you're right. To see it, right? To see it. I mean, you could see the picture and so forth, but man, standing inside one of these machines and so forth, I mean, that's why I want to go to something like IMTS where you really see it going on. And I want to get back over to Austin so we get through a couple more slides.
Yeah, you got one slide down, buddy.
But let me just say one thing, because I think this is cool. So if you've ever read the book Skunk Works, which is about Lockheed Martin's development of the U-2 and the the SR-71 and so forth, I mean, you read this thing and you're like, God, to be there, I mean, the energy and so forth. Or you read some of these books about these startups and so forth, where it's just like, man, you're going to the whole bit. This is another one of those stories. You're part of these teams that, you had those students. I mean, they still talk about sort of being overnight at IMTS and sort of keeping these things going, and how crazy was our first build in the whole bit. I mean, this is stuff that legends are made out of, right? I mean, we're going to be echoing this for a long time. So, I mean, not only is it cool and it's important, it's great manufacturing, but God, it is just energizing in terms of how things move forward. Anyways, I could blabber on all day long. Austin, I know you got a few more slides. Let's get to them before we run out of time, man.
Yeah. And just building on what Lonnie said, you list those 5 companies, and that's, the first 5 companies, but there's a whole nother level of companies too when it comes to the material suppliers that have, spun up their operations based on the show, and, so many other tangential industries of companies that, have new product lines based off the machines and whatnot. So it's really astounding to see what came out of that single demonstration. So, and, so on the slide here, I just have, if this is how it started in 2016, this is how it's going now. We've got 14,000 square feet here in Akron, and we've got 4 BAM systems here at AES. We've got 10 full-time people working. We usually have, a variety of interns working with us here throughout the year. And we're really starting to see, an explosion in applications of stuff. I got 2 of my favorite ones on here. These are, end use parts that we're producing for customers. On the left is a F-16 cockpit shell, and this is going to get a lot more press over the next few months. We've got some videos coming out about this, but this is a company that had a multiple 100-piece weldment, and they would cut, weld, attach 1 million brackets to this thing. And we basically went through, redesigned it to where it's 3 printed parts with a couple of bolt-on aluminum pieces. And they're using these to manufacture cockpit simulators for pilots to do training on. So, really cool applications that are out there. The one on the right is Dive Technologies, a really awesome startup out of Boston who's doing underwater autonomous underwater vehicles. And they came to us, and they were wanting to do tooling, they were wanting to do parts, and we told them no, they should do tooling, and they came back and said no, we want to print parts. I think we told them no like 3 times because we didn't think it would work. And finally we said, okay, we'll try it. And lesson learned on my part, it's worked out to be an absolutely great application. And we've manufactured several of these underwater vehicles for them. So, applications, I highlight these 2 applications because these show, really where the technology's going. Tooling is a fantastic market. A majority of our business is tooling. Tooling is an existing market, so it's the easy market. It's what kind of keeps the lights on. But these are the projects that are really exciting to be part of, because we're manufacturing things here that have really never been done before in this manner. So lots of really interesting engineering challenges, lots of interesting, printing challenges, lots of interesting machining challenges. So some really exciting stuff in that space.
Yeah, I mean, you really highlight something, I think, Austin, that's important, which is you're technical. And you understand that you have this interplay. It's not just hit the print button.
Right.
There's limitations to all these processes. And so you're doing design work, working with your customers on how to do the design. But I also like the where you said you told Dive no a couple of times. That's awesome. Because it's like you got to take some risks,
I think it's what I really credit them with. Like I said, they've been an absolutely fantastic partner. They're a startup, and they're in the same boat. No pun intended. They're in the same boat as us, and they had to figure out how to make this thing work. And we told them no, because of X, and they came back and they fixed X like in a day. And then we told them no because of Y, and they came back and they said, well, okay, we can fix this and we can change this. And we told them no, maybe 3 times, but it was like in 2 weeks. And at the end of those 2 weeks, they had already advanced their designs and their concepts far enough. Like, oh, okay, I think we can work with that. And So it really is amazing how quickly the smaller companies can operate and problem solve and get from point A to point B. Because we see that, because we work with the small companies and we work with the large companies, and there's a big difference there sometimes.
Yeah, I think there's this really interesting cross section between entrepreneurship and Yankee ingenuity. You're just going to try it. You're just going to try and fail quickly. And the thing that I like about the large scale stuff is you can fail pretty quickly. You can make something at scale in a day, and if it doesn't work, okay, then queue it up and do it another day, and in a couple of weeks you can really start to hone in on something that works. That's exciting.
Yeah. I mean, I agree, and in fact, I mean, the speed and so forth. And by the way, as Lonnie already said, sort of big companies and so forth. Project with the Navy where we made a submarine, right? You sort of print it up. But the first week, I mean, to Austin's point, the first week was, hey, let us show you the process. Let's think about it, because you got to think differently of it, right? Yeah. And it was great and so forth. And they went over and tested it. And while they were testing it, they dropped the thing on its nose, right? And they stopped the project for 12 to 18 months. And they called us up, and Lonnie and team printed out a new nose in a few weeks and shipped it off to them. I mean, it's awesome.
But that was like deja vu all over again, though, because we had this guy Gary Shields I had the same experience, Austin. Gary Shields from Carter Rock called me up and said, "I want to print a submarine." I was like, "These are not pressure vessels." And he goes, "Because we're going to put people in it." And I was like, "No." And then he said, "Well, we're going to flood it." And I was like, "You got people in it." They're in wetsuits, they'll be fine. It was like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, on a little more pragmatic note, Austin, would you mind rolling back to slide 3? I was thinking about something there in terms of our steps. So one of the things I want to point out, and just learning, right? Because I know you're gonna talk a little bit about lesson learned, but I just want to highlight that you've got some really big doors on your facility, because you have really big machines and so forth. I'm not going to name names, but we just took delivery on a really big machine, and it was delayed a day because they built the machine at the plant. They were getting ready to ship it out, and they couldn't get it out their door. It was too big for their doors. They had to do a workout. So again, these are the things you sort of think about.
Yes.
But I thought the door is great, right? So these are think about these things.
Yeah, I mean, we have 12-foot wide doors, and we just picked up the BAM 806, and it's 13 and a half feet wide. So here we were, putting a 14-foot door in, and it's it's issues that you don't think of.
We had that same problem when we moved into our new building, because all the first MDF, the main bay door was 20 feet wide. The new one, it was 12, and I kept going. They gotta have a problem. They gotta have a big problem. Awesome.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. I only really have, 2 more slides. I've got this, just, more examples of projects that we've gotten to be a part of. And, we do machining. We've got Thermwood machines in house. We've got 2 Thermwood routers. We love the Thermwood routers. They're our workhorse machines. So we use those day in, day out for tooling. And it's, looking at how our company's structured, we like to say printing is the easiest part now, and it's also the most boring part. If printing is not really boring, then you've done something wrong beforehand at this point. So, but there's a tremendous amount of engineering effort that has to go into the projects. There's a tremendous amount of machining and post-processing that has to go into the projects. So, doing that stuff is really where, you go from being a printing company to being a manufacturing company. And there've been some lessons learned along the way there. That really kind of gets me to, the next, the 4 keys to success that I've, kind of learned while doing this business. And the first one, we kind of talked about it earlier, it's really, just show up. Showing up can have tremendous consequences, and usually good consequences. And if you ever listen to the podcast, How I Built This with Guy Raz, one question that he always asks folks is, how much of your success was hard work and how much of it was luck? And you get a variety of answers. And what I've kind of found out is, a lot of the times that I've got lucky, it's been by showing up and showing up at IMTS, showing up at the MDF, showing up at a random meeting. I moved back to Cleveland in 2015, and I'll never forget this. I got married in April of 2015, and I was still working in Peoria at Caterpillar, and my wife was living in Cleveland, and she had moved into our new house in Cleveland, and she had been living there, for like 2 months, so married. And my plan was to move back, and I moved back. It was like June 30th. And I moved back from Peoria, and my very first night, I don't advise this, but my very first night that I'm living with my wife, I say, hey, I'm going to run out and meet up with some friends. Because I was back in Cleveland, and hadn't seen a bunch of people in a while. And I was like, I've got my whole life to spend with you. Just let me go out this one night. And so I go out, and I met Andrew, and that's the night that I met Andrew. And and that's one of my favorite stories. I didn't know my business partner Andrew before 2015. And, I moved back, and that night I went out to meet up with some friends, and I met Andrew, and we were the only two that were in manufacturing at the time. So we really hit it off, and that's what led to our relationship. And that's as important to AES starting as, going to IMTS. And
so I've got it. Are you still married?
I am still married, happily married.
Okay, so Tom, we're going to plan a trip up to Akron, and we're going to take his wife out to dinner and let her home alone.
That's really rolling the dice there, I'll tell you.
That's a great story.
That is. Make sure your wife gets plenty of credit for that.
Yeah.
She does. I tell that story to lots of people. She's amazing.
I thought you were going to say that, you told her you were going to be moving, No, I'm going to go out with my buddies,
Hey, I'm here. I'll be back later. So
that's awesome. Well, I could, actually, that's the one thing my wife doesn't worry about too much, because she knows I don't have too many friends. So she's like, well, you don't have to go out anyway. So
Austin, on some of the, so I would say you're probably the best in the field at doing what you do. And there's now multiple companies making these systems. Do they reach out to you? Do they communicate with you in terms of lessons learned and what to do with the technology to make it better?
Yes. Yeah. Yes and no. I would say we have good relationships with all the major players in the industry. And, we've been to Thermwood's facility numerous times. Like I said, we've got some of their routers here. We love their routers. The LSAM machine is an absolutely fantastic machine. I've gotten to use it at their facility a few times, and it is capable of some really impressive stuff.
Yeah.
Thermwood. I call Thermwood the Apple of large format additive machines. They have a pretty good line of sight to what they think they want to do, and it's they don't do a lot of focus groups for their machines. And the same way Apple didn't do a lot of focus groups for the iPhone, because when you're inventing something that doesn't exist, people don't always know what they want. So I really credit Thermwood for that. But they've been great to work with, and eventually we want to get one of their machines in here as well. Ingersoll's been great as well. I talk with Curtis frequently. Probably not as much as I should, but I've been out to their facility. I've seen their machines. So that's kind of the manufacturer's level. Below that, I say there's the different users, such as users and developers, R&D folks, and you guys are a big part of that. I don't think there's a month that goes by that I'm not emailing Brian or Phil or Alex or someone and asking some question, or what about this, what about that. So and you guys are still working with Cincinnati to progress the technology forward. We have a very close relationship with Cincinnati, obviously. Talking with them on almost I'd say at least a bi-weekly basis. And then folks like the University of Maine, doing a lot of development work in the space. So there's lots of folks that we work with, and that's kind of that's really you're stealing my thunder almost. That's the third note over here. It's really the network is so important, and who you know. And I stuck around at Caterpillar just long enough to realize that. And my last year at CAT, I was in the additive manufacturing group, and it was a new group that CAT had just formed, and they had some internal people, of which I was an internal person, and then they hired some external people for the group. And I was able to be very productive in the group more than some of the other folks, not because I knew more than they knew. They knew more about additive than I did, but I had just been with the company for 5 years, and I knew how the company operated, and I knew where to go to for help and how systems and processes worked. And I just had a bigger network. And that was kind of like my parting aha moment about who you know. And now, 5 years into large format, it's the same thing. It's, we know the material suppliers. We work really well with Techmer and Alan and the folks at Techmer, and David Vorty and the folks at Sabic. So, I'm getting ready to go to Rapid next week. And, I've already got a list of, like 15 people that I need to track down and see. And we've got lunches scheduled and dinners scheduled. And really, that network is super important to my success.
So show up, ask for help, network. What's the last one? What's the
last one? And I'll come back to ask for help because I don't want to gloss over that. The last one, is be flexible. I think I think a lot of people set goals and they get target fixation, and it's like I got to do this, and then I got to do this, and I got to do this, and then eventually I gotta I'll end up where I want to go. And I think if there's one thing I've learned in the 10 or so odd years in my career is there's lots of ways to get to where you want to go, and being flexible can get you there. There's just lots of paths you can go down. I knew when I was in college, I worked for a small company, a really small company, and then I worked for a startup, and I loved it. And I was like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to have my own business. I want to start my own company. And I graduated and I went to work for like a Fortune 50 company, right? And the exact opposite of what you would think I would do. But I couldn't imagine doing what I'm doing now without having spent time at Caterpillar and learning how to get things done, learning how big companies operate. So that was incredibly valuable 5 years experience in my life, and taught me a lot about how the world actually operates. Lots of things they don't teach you in school. And so be flexible. There's lots of paths. Like I said, I was happy at CAT, and then this came up, and I was like, hey, I can give this a shot. I think as someone with a technical background, and I'm sure Tom and Lonnie, you guys can relate to this. and a lot of other engineers can. There's always a demand for engineers, right? And I always thought, I'm going to go do this business. If this doesn't work out, it's not a big deal. It won't ruin me. I'll just go back to working an engineer job. And there's always a demand for engineers.
I'd hire you in a minute. If this doesn't work out, which it's going to work out, just call me, man.
So that was never, because a lot of people say, it's risky, and I think there's risk to it. There's monetary risk, and there might be some career risk to it, but there's always going to be a demand for engineers. You can always go back and get an engineer.
Well, I think you said the word that I didn't see here that I think is right also. So it's being willing to take some risk. You're printing that sub, that you're doing. It's like, there's some risk there, but you're willing to do that. Starting a company, there's some risk there. I'll tell you a story, and this is another story I don't tell a lot of people. When we printed the car, my chief engineer, one of my senior designers, he was a mentor to me, Randy Lind, best designer I've ever known. He came to me and he looks me in the eye, goes, Lonnie, look me in the eye. We're not going to print a car. We're not going to print a car because we were struggling, right? And I was like, Randy, if we don't print a car, we'll print chairs. It doesn't matter. We're going to print something big, and we're going to try. And to your point about being flexible, you just got to try. You just have to try. And I think there's something that burns in a lot of people and entrepreneurs. And like I said, I categorize you as an entrepreneur / innovator, and there's something that burns inside you that wants you to do something. You want to do something, and and it keeps you up at night thinking about it. It gets you to go out with your friends on your first night with your wife. But there's something that burns in you, and it's really exciting. It really, really excites me to no end. I would die to be 20 years younger, because you're to me at a place that you're at the very beginning of what could be something really, really, really big. And so looking forward, what do you see happening in the next 4, 5, 6 years? What's your horizon look like?
Oh man. I probably should have a better answer. But I feel lately I've been stuck in like what's happening next week and 6 months out to long term. And it's funny because we were just having some conversations with a bank locally about what the next like 3 years was going to be like. And I can come up with a plan. And I think I know we're headed in the right direction. I know we want to continue growing. We're going to grow 100% this year from where we were at last year. Last year, we were about even with 2019, kind of due to COVID. But other than that, we've grown at least 100% year over year, every year. And, I was starting to think that like, okay, we can't keep doing that, can we? And I didn't think we were going to do that this year, and we have. So, we're gonna keep growing the team. We've got a lot of equipment on site. So really it's growing the applications, growing kind of the market awareness and the market development, and pushing forward. The additive space, I say it's kind of like dog years. If you spent a year in additive, it's like you spent like 4 years in additive. And it's not as true maybe as it was 5 or 6 years ago when additive was really blowing up for the first time. But still, it's such a nascent industry, and there's lots of interesting things going on. I know the work you guys are doing in the metal space with Lincoln and Wolf Robotics, and that's interesting side of things. There's the concrete side of things. We don't have plans in any of those spaces to do any kind of metal stuff or any kind of concrete stuff, but it's really fun to watch, and it's fun to watch others succeed in their spaces, and it's fun to watch these companies kind of just evolve from nothing, and it keeps me excited, and being flexible. So you never know what might happen next.
Yeah, One thing I do love about the additive industry is it's very collaborative. There's competition, no doubt about it, but there's also a lot. When you're talking about networking, there's a lot of people that are helping each other, and from my vantage point, it's probably the most important thing that could be going on right now, because there's still a lot of challenges. It's not a hit the easy button, and so that's why I was curious if I was Thermwood or Cincinnati or Ingersoll, I would be picking your brain constantly, because you're making money at this. You're making money at it, and your own.
To date, I'm pretty sure we're still the only company that makes a living solely by printing large parts. So, we have competition in the space, and there are always companies that do additive tooling and other stuff. So I still think we're the only one that solely is at making a living. It was funny, like even Cincinnati, some of the Cincinnati technicians were in here the other day helping us get the larger machine running, and they were here for like a week, and I think on like day 3 or day 4, one of them said, "Man, you guys really do like print a lot of stuff," and I'm like, I don't get paid if I don't print anything. I gotta, I don't eat if I don't print anything. So
so I think
it's important.
We have a couple of questions. I think, is that right? Is there somebody that wants a question?
Well, I had a few, but I want to make sure that Austin gets a chance to touch on one of his keys to success, since we took that slide down. But you're before I get to that, the 4 keys you had, your 4 keys to success, and it sounds like there was a 5th one, which is of course evaluating your risks, but knowing to make the jump. Just jump, go for it. And it helps to be as good as you are at evaluating the risk, because it sounds like the dive company definitely wanted to make that jump a few times, and you were the guy to help them evaluate their risks and be like, no, we got to do this first, and then they're like, okay, are we ready now? And you did it. But let's go back to ask for help. Tell us more about that.
I think that's really important, and it's funny, you spend your entire educational life, elementary school, high school, college, and it's what right? And it's what is what you're graded on. And when you get out into the real world, it's not really what it's what you accomplish, and it's how you get things done. And the easiest way to get things done oftentimes is to ask for help. And, like I said, I call Oak Ridge all the time and ask for help, and they always pick up a phone. They always get back to me. Same with, Cincinnati, same with our material suppliers, always calling and asking for help. And, I couldn't imagine, getting to where we were at today without having the help of, everyone I just named, and, a bunch of people that I haven't named. So asking for help is a big one. Trying to do it on your own is just crazy. But then I guess we could add that 5th one in there, the risk side of things. Obviously, my wife tells me I have a very high risk tolerance, and I tend to agree with her. I'm not worried about failing, but it is something that I noticed. Probably like 18 to 24 months ago, I noticed that even I sometimes, and Bevan, you made it perfect with the dive comment. I've failed so many times. At printing large items that I know what will work, and I try to push people to what I know will work now, and sometimes that has made me less risk tolerant. And, we've had some people join the team in the last 12 months, and they've wanted to try things. And I think I've been like initially a little hesitant. And then I was like, well, you know what, we just got to try it, because, I'm starting to get away from like, yeah, let's try it and learn. And, probably not taking as many risks as we should be pushing the technology forward. So it's something to be aware of. You have to have the risk tolerance to start, but then it's also, it can be a challenge to maintain that risk tolerance as, the stakes get higher, because when it was just, three of us and we were, a small company, if we failed, it could be bad, but it wasn't, like the end of the world. But now we're a much larger operation, and I worry more about failing as a company now than I did, in the first 2 or 3 years of business.
Awesome. Austin, thank you so much. And of course, Tom, Lonnie, thank you guys so much. And speaking of asking for help, if anybody watching or listening has any questions for the three guys up here, make sure you send your questions to info@imts.com, and we will try to get those answered within a day. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good one.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
All right. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thanks again.